Hi, this is Bill Hader.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Bill Hader. Bill Hader.
Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the We Heart Hater podcast. I'm your co-host Casey Killingsworth, or as fans of this podcast call me, the I-Man.
And I am your hater historian, Deej Barons, not an actual cannibal.
And this week we're returning to season 32 of SNL with our review of the Shia LaBeouf and Avril Lavigne episode, which aired April 14th, 2007. I know I've been promising you guys some big guests for this one. I have to say that completely fell through. People I reached out to moments ago, I just found out. Bit of a scheduling snafu on this person's part because they thought this was going to be next week.
And let's just put out there, give us a hit up at wehearthater@gmail.com if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, and if there's any particular Bill Hader stuff you want to focus on, and we'll be glad to have you on.
Shia LaBeouf. I knew who he was because I'd seen some of the Disney show, Even Stevens, and I read the book Holes. They'd made a movie of it. And yeah, I was in high school, so I was watching this with my dad, and I remember him being pretty baffled as to who Shia was, but by the time he would host the next year, he'd kind of know who he was. He would be in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which him celebrating that really aged like milk. But Avril Lavigne, I won't say much on her. Yeah, my sister was a fan of her music, but I was kind of over her. And that weird conspiracy theory from a while ago that says she died and was replaced by a sound-alike named Melissa, whoever it was. I mean, it's kind of become like the Paul is dead conspiracy theory of my generation. And don't you think it's a little bit easier to believe that Avril got a little bit of cosmetic surgery after her first couple albums were hits, and that's why she looks a little different with each time she came out with something new? That's just me, but...
Well, also, she started pretty young, and of course, I have a soft spot for Avril because she's Canadian. So I won't have anyone disparaging Miss Avril. When you grow up, your face changes over time. If she had some work done, so what? Have you heard of Mar-a-Lago face?
I have not. Do I want to know what Mar-a-Lago face is?
Well, it's basically women who hang out at
Mar-a-Lago. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
They have this old picture of them when they're really, really pretty, and then as soon as they go to Mar-a-Lago, the most extreme plastic surgery you'll ever see.
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about now.
So, if someone like that can do that, it's like, yeah. So you get a little something fixed. I mean, whatever someone needs to do and has the ability to do to mold themselves to what they want to be, then, go right ahead.
Every brunette female anchor on Fox News has Mar-a-Lago face, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And in his cabinet, so. But anyway, on a more pleasant topic, let's get right into this episode with Bill's moments. Starting first with the Hathaway Mustache Ride Company, which is a pre-tape fake commercial, where we learn in 1887, ladies hair tonic magnate Leonidas Hathaway, played by Alec Baldwin. In 1887, ladies hair tonic magnate Leonidas Hathaway, Alec Baldwin, proposed to his board of directors, Hader and Hammond included, that
mustache rides. Mustache rides. Yes. Mustache rides. But I ask you, should the health and recreational benefits of a Hathaway mustache ride be available only to women of substantial means? Why not bring our product before a wider public by making these rides available on a sample basis to women of modest means, or even no means at all?
Though Leonidas Hathaway couldn't have known it at the time.
Surely you're not proposing that we offer free mustache rides.
The world would never be quite the same.
Yes, it's a cheap, raunchy, tawdry gag that borrows a bit from a moment with Horatio Sands and Andy and Jason in the previous sketches. In the previous season's Mustache talk show sketch with host Jason, my name was Earl Lee, but I admire its strong commitment to turning what's essentially a white trash t-shirt slogan into a faux refined big corporate puff piece commercial. I got a kick out of Hader's tearful expression at the end of the meeting, as well as Seth's consultation with Wig as she meets Forte with his vibrating mustache. And hey, a rare Seth sketch appearance in 2007 when he was doing updates, so maybe this was cut from the previous season as well. And I also like seeing Sudeikis, Armisen, and Sandberg as elaborately mustache men, including Keenan's dreaded Rastafarian stash to close this out. That was a neat visual.
Did a lot of searching, used my best Google foo, and I cannot find any indication that this was actually a cut from a previous episode. Old timey Bill, he always looks very classic, like the 1800s kind of gear, or like early 20s, early 40s. He's a very kind of old school, classic kind of guy. Definitely has inspiration from the Spencer's Gifts. The vibrating mustache was a nice little touch. And it kind of reminds me of, well, there's one video that's been circulating around from Ricky Lindholm, who is apparently married to Fred Armisen. And it's a song, I Want to Be a Woman in the 1880s. Because back in the day, when women were accused of having hysteria, the standard treatment was to use a machine to give them some fun. So that way. So I think the vibrating mustache kind of adds along to that kind of same thought. Not one I go back to, but still, it's amusing in its own little way.
I think Ricky Lindholm reused that gag as like a major plot point in season 1 of Another Period from Comedy Central. If you remember that show from like a decade ago.
Since I don't have Comedy Central in Canada, unless it's been on like Comedy Network or something, I wouldn't necessarily have seen it.
It was the show with her and Natasha Leggero. It was supposed to be modern day Kardashian Real Housewife type reality show, but set in the early 1900s. Next, let's move on to one of both of our favorite sketches of all time, and one of the major reasons we want to do this episode of SNL in particular. This sketch is simply called Buying Beer, and Kenan Thompson is a convenience store cashier who is not persuaded in the slightest by LaBeouf and Sandberg, Shy and Andy as two obvious underage teens. He is not convinced at all to let them purchase 2 6-packs of beer without seeing any IDs from either of them, despite their exaggerated talk of their advanced adult ages, years of work history, number of children between them, or the other times they previously bought beer and cigarettes at other stores, and then
just a couple of old timers.
And suddenly our boy Bill Hader walks in as an ATF agent.
Good work, guy. You passed the test.
What you talking about?
I'm Agent Parker with the ATF. Agent Ron Harris and Pat Wilson here work for the ATF, and we've been running sting operations trying to catch store clerks selling alcohol to underage kids.
Yeah, I'm just doing my job.
You wouldn't believe how many store clerks don't even check IDs. That's why, on behalf of the ATF, I would like you to have this Certificate of Responsibility. You can just hang this up anywhere.
Should we get going, guys?
Yes, back to the ATF office.
Yeah, but let's first put this beer away since we won't need it.
But Kenan still needs to see ID, and then Hader's about to hand over his ID. He pulls out his wallet, and then in comes Will Forte.
Okay, this is a robbery.
Oh no! A robbery! Here, take my wallet.
I just want this one wallet, thank you.
Bill offers his wallet because he just wants the one wallet. And he looks at the ID and says, 24, you looked older, but I can tell this is a government-issued license, so see you later, suckers. Kenan still won't let him buy beer without an ID, and then Andy Samberg says, how about this crisp $5 bill for the ID? And he says, sold. See you guys back at the dorm. Yeah, Andy and the Lonely Island wrote this according to their podcast. It was my favorite live sketch of the night. Every purposely stilted beat of this hit for me, from Sandberg's slightly too big suit and obviously fake mustache paired with his shaggy hair to Bill, every word out of Bill's mouth being delivered as if he were narrating a 1950s school film strip. And yeah, the forte was icing on the cake. Okay, this is a robbery. And the ending seemed, well, a bit cheap and forced, but Keenan's line sold it, as long as you don't consider any darker implications that could be behind that one. But yeah, that was a straight up banger.
All-time classic for me. I've been at this place for so long. It's like, oh no, I can't find my ID. I know what happened. I was at the golf course. I met pretty business cards, and I must have actually gave one of them my ID. It's like, because why else would I have these 3 very legitimate business cards with me?
And then Shia was like, well, I know what happened to my ID. One of my kids took it out of my wallet and was playing with it because they think it's a toy.
They think it's a toy,
Those
yeah.
kids of mine.
And Bill's part is, again, for me, the best. I don't know if you had film strips when you were in elementary and high school, but we definitely had a lot of film strips. There's a very definite kind of announcer kind of cadence to all that. His quote-unquote ATF jacket, something with ATF written on it and pasted over whatever logo happens to be on that jacket. And of course, presented the, here's your certificate of responsibility. And I'm unveiling this thing that's just been sort of folded up in his pocket. Everyone sold it. And the beer that they're buying being Natty Light, which is a well-known kind of cheap beer, which I know Bill has drunk in the past because there's a story he related on Jimmy Kimmel.
Picking up beer cans. This is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I remember there was Natty Light cans, and he was like, what, are you all on a budget?
From top to bottom, completely flawless.
We used to think that it would be Pabst Blue Ribbon would be the beer you would drink if you were on a budget. The cheap beer that you enjoy sincerely and unironically if you're a college-age student.
In the U.S., because being from Canada, we have real beer.
Of course, you guys have Moosehead up there.
Yep, Moosehead's a good one. Molson's a classic, though. I bought some Molson recently for nostalgia, but I live up the street from a really good craft brewery, so.
Okay, and speaking of just top to bottom flawless all-time bangers, it's this episode's digital short, which just happens to be Dear Sister. I think we all know how this goes. Bill Hader's Keith, Andy Samberg's Dave, Kristen Wiig is the sister in question, and Armisen and Sudeikis are 2 cops. So in case you've been living under a rock and haven't seen this or just need a refresher, how this goes basically is Keith is writing a letter to his sister as Dave walks in and suddenly shoots him. Keith falls to the floor, as one does when they get shot. Suddenly, in his moment of, oh shit, what the fuck did I do? Panic, oh god, what have I done? Suddenly, Keith shoots Dave, and they both fall on the floor. Then Eric walks in. Hey guys, I just thought of the funniest thing. They both shoot Eric. And then Keith's sister walks in and is shot multiple times by Keith, Dave, and Eric. And then 2 cops enter the scene and read the letter that Keith was writing to his sister, which details the exact order of all these shootings, as I just mentioned them, and then adds on the P.S. The 2 cops are going to walk in, read this letter, and shoot each other. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, peak millennial meme comedy. Doesn't get much better than this, the perfect balance of silly 2000s randomness with even sillier 2000s melodrama that doesn't come across as too dark or tasteless, not intentionally, but it was kind of a victim of unfortunate timing, which I'll explain in a minute.
And now, We Heart Hater presents a dramatic reading of The Letter from Dear Sister. Dear Sister, by the time you read this, I'll be dead. This is how I think it's going to happen. Dave will shoot me. Then I'll shoot Dave. Then Eric will enter and get shot by Dave. then you'll come in and get shot by Eric, Dave, and I multiple times. Love, your brother Keith. P.S. Then the two cops will read this letter and shoot each other.
Bravo. That was brilliant. The origins of this sketch, according to partly my knowledge of the Lonely Island's lore and partly what was revealed on the Lonely Island Seth Meyers podcast. So anyone with a working knowledge of Lonely Island history knows that this short stemmed from the boys' love of mid-2000s Fox teen soap opera The OC. Specifically, this is a parody of the season 2 finale where Misha Barton shoots a guy to stop a brutal fight, which is on YouTube if you can find it. Their love of the OC led to them creating their own parody series of the OC called The Boo, which, like the OC, but set in Malibu, hence they call it The Boo, which they made for Dan Harmon's Channel 101 festival. And this is a sketch that Andy brought to the show with him pre-written from that time period, and they used it when the show was asking them for more short films. And so they went to a hotel and shot it until like 4 a.m. And that's how this sketch came to be. And I have quite a bit more I wanted to say, because I have a potentially hot take that I thought was going to be the centerpiece of this podcast. But before I get to that, I'll hand it over to Deej to share her review of this sketch.
I've actually just started re-listening to all the episodes of the Lonely Island podcast. And this was actually filmed, at the time it was called the Flat Hotel, a boutique hotel chain, which is the Moxie, New York City, NYC Times Square. Filmed a few things across the street there, just because it's away from Studio 8H. There's a channel I follow called Editing is Everything.
Was that YouTube channel the one that did the video that was like, what if The Shining was a romantic comedy with the soundtrack being Salisbury Hill by Peter Gabriel?
Yeah. They'll take a trailer and then they'll re-edit it as a comedy or a drama. Mary Poppins as a spy thriller. Dear Sister is a prime example of the power of editing. When they're shooting Kristen Wiig's The Sister several times. And the repeat of the music captures the standard, oh my god, I got blood on me and I'm gonna fall down. And one of the stories I heard was they only had one gun for a prop. So it's simple but effective, but still very complex, because just trying to get the timing, repetition, and the escalation. Even though it's a chunk piece, I think it's probably was elevated from its previous version. And just from my latest experiences in editing this podcast, at least from an audio perspective, I mean, I really appreciate the timing and precision that editing takes.
Okay, and so I have a little more I want to say on this one. Yeah, I picked this because, it was, even though the digital shorts are Andy Samberg's thing, this is like the first digital short Lonely Island moment that Bill got to share in that blew up and became viral. And, of course, they started blowing up on the show when Lazy Sunday became a viral hit. And like Lazy Sunday before it, this one was being put on and taken off of YouTube constantly, partially due to music rights and other copyright-related reasons, partially due to the fact that this sketch in this episode aired right around the same time as the Virginia Tech shooting, which yikes, yeah, that was just like I said, unfortunate timing, which this short was a victim of. And looking back, we can say that's probably the worst thing about this one. And I believe they bring it up on the Seth Meyers and Lonely Island podcast. And speaking of editing, they also said, Seth said, like, this would even blow up on TikTok if we made it today. But, this was the era of YouTube. This was at least the Lonely Island's third viral digital short from their time on the show that inspired a whole YouTube trend. And when Seth said, this could blow up on TikTok today, yeah, I think you can trace a de-evolution of just viral video meme trends from the early YouTube era when Lonely Island stuff went viral. Trace that de-evolution to the current TikTok era when the newest SNL sketch to blow up there and inspire new viral trends is Domingo. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the remakes and parodies and things that this inspired, started with Lazy Sunday. When that first came out, people parodied it, people recreated it, and they did it in a way that not only involved them actually getting out a camera, putting on costumes, and filming themselves doing it. Some people actually tried to parody the song, recreate it, change the lyrics, and some people even created their own original songs in response to this as like a diss track from like the West Coast perspective or the Midwest perspective. That took a lot of effort on those people's parts. When Dick in a Box went viral and Dear Sister. And the trend with Lazy Sunday, that was such a big deal that I think The Office and later Workaholics parodied that in a way that made Andy and the Lonely Island think The Office was making fun of them. But then Dick in a Box went viral and this went viral, and we got people just recreating the song and the video themselves without adding too much of a twist to it to make it a parody, just a remake, which is fine. There were some parodies in there, but with Dear Sister in particular, we got one meme trend of this where people would just take clips of popular movies and TV shows where someone gets shot or punched or assaulted, and they would place the song Hide and Seek over that and just slow it down, recreate that. That became a meme. These things are still valid, but require a little less effort than what people do with Lazy Sunday. And that brings us to Domingo blowing up on TikTok, which got the original sketch got an absurd amount of views on SNL's official TikTok page, and that inspired a meme trend that's just partly people just filming themselves lip syncing and dancing for like a 15-second clip, and part of it was editing the green screen of Marcello as Domingo over some image with a caption of when you have to explain something. So with TikTok, it just doesn't require much more effort than just putting these images together, putting this caption, put the song, then hit post, and that's that. So there's even a clip of Marcelo Hernandez on stage doing a stand-up gig, and him saying, all right, I'll do the lines from Domingo once, and then we'll make a deal. We'll do it once. You'll put your phones down. Let me tell the jokes I wrote, because I guess people were going to a stand-up gig saying, do Domingo. And then, I don't know if you've heard Billy Crystal's Marvelous album 40 years ago. That opens with a clip of him coming out and milking the Fernando, you look marvelous phrase for all it's worth in a similar way, saying, well, we'll do this once, and then we'll move on with the show. So, and I'm sure that's not what Marcelo wants for his career. He's not just Domingo. He contains some multitudes. But, the point is, as we've condensed more and more of our online media and social media consumption to smartphones and smart TVs rather than actual computers and laptops, and we started looking to these devices for more and more instant gratification, quick dopamine hits, because they're always there. Our attention spans have shortened along with our work ethics. They've both been diminished in some way. And, we're just consuming and producing shorter and more bite-sized content on our phones now, to the point where, the most effort it takes to go viral on TikTok is just slamming a bunch of shit together over a song and hitting post. I don't even want to think about the effect this is having on Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And, I'm not saying this is some old boomer or anything who's completely against smartphones or being online. I'm just saying, we would do well to recognize this as the most immediate, everyday danger of not just TikTok, but smartphones in relation to the other wide-reaching societal problems with these platforms, and adjust our viewing and consumption habits accordingly from our own mental health and well-being. And I say this as someone who did most of their research for this, especially this portion of this podcast, on a smartphone, and am currently reading notes for it off a smartphone as we're recording it, just to cut way back on mouse clicks so I don't have to click on another tab on my computer to access my notes like this.
Editor Deej, thanks you.
There's one mouse click I hope you won't edit out to illustrate my point. But the irony is not lost on me. And yeah, there are parts of TikTok can educate you on certain topics or enlighten you or just give you information you wouldn't find elsewhere, as with a lot of social media. Let's not get those little bits of it get completely drowned out in the sea of just brain-rotting meme bullshit.
But as a counterpoint to that, though, is there's a lot of things I watch on TikToks that are like really long and involved series. One series about family where one person plays all the parts. There's a lot of really good stuff that is being put out there. I remember back when everyone was like, don't shoot videos vertically. And now, with Instagram and moreover TikTok, that's what we have a lot of is vertical video.
People who've gotten on SNL in the past few years recently, specifically Jane Wickline and the boys from Please Don't Destroy, got famous for bite-sized content on TikTok. They put a lot of thought into, and they're just being in the right place at the right time, for better or for worse. But that also shows how TikTok has, affected our society and our viewing habits. Even SNL's scouting for it now. Young people are putting stuff on there, and they look to TikTok for just pointers on how to stay relevant to the generation that made this their thing, even though they may not care about it, which I think is a little bit misguided. And, they should reconsider if that's the audience they want to play to, even if that audience in that generation is something that NBC apparently thinks they need to depend on for relevance and eyeballs to keep the show going.
My personal favorite Dear Sister Inspired video / meme is, and spoiler alert if you have not seen Barry. If you haven't, why haven't you? I'm jealous of people who haven't seen Barry because they get to experience it for the first time again. But when Barry says, "Oh wow," and then gets killed, then someone edited the final shot together with the Imogen Heap song playing in the background. So it's like, of course, it had to happen.
I even remember one that I found is still on YouTube, which is nice. Probably my favorite of these is the Bugs Bunny Daffy Duck season, Wabbit season 1.
Oh, the classic.
And I think I might be Mandela affecting myself here, but I could have sworn at one point someone did, well, speaking of spoiler alerts, someone did one to Maggie shooting Mr. Burns on The Simpsons, which if no one did that, why not? It would have been perfect, but I'm sure someone did it. And speaking of all of that, the next sketch is Sofa King, where local furniture sales couple Katir and Asar Muhtar, played by Armisen and Rudolph, along with their sons Nasir, Onan, and Nasir 2, played by Shia, Andy, and Bill.
All here at Sofa King.
How great is that?
It's Sofa King great.
This isn't the first naughty wordplay sketch SNL has done in history, but it may be the shortest when you compare it to things like Sweaty Balls and Cork Soakers and things of that ilk, which this is. It feels like a real blackout. Not too much to hate about it. The main thing that dragged it down for me just a bit, got a bit of a been there, done that feeling, because I think the Sofa King joke may have already been passed around as like an early meme months before the sketch even aired. I know it was kind of a thing in my high school, and one of those shows, early shows on cable that showed just web videos was, I remember them showing clips of someone tricking a middle-aged woman into reading a piece of paper that said, "I'm Sofa King, we Todd Ed," which That's 2007 for you. But anyway, I wasn't too crazy about their need to have everyone in this play, every character in this be played by uniformly unibrowed Middle Easterners in order to make this work, being a sketch cast by majority white players. They ended up having the exact right energy to put this over. I like Maya peering out from behind the graphic placed directly like white Mike Wazowski Monsters Inc. style. It felt a little cheap, but I got a kick out of it. And I like Shia's like wide-eyed 1,000-yard stare and Hader's goofy grin and just shoulder shaking, and Andy playing his character is just a slick, slightly sleazy-looking smoker. So there was just enough silliness in this.
Every time they say Sofa King, they bring up the graphic of the name. They have to have that there to prove that we're not swearing. This is actually what we're saying. If you're hearing something different, then that's on you.
I bet that was an easy compromise with the censors, who must have saw what this was going for.
Similar to Schitt's Creek, they had to do the same thing. So when Eugene Levy went on Colbert, every time he said Schitt's Creek, the logo came up on the screen. One other thing that Schitt's Creek had to do before they could keep the name was actually show in a phone book that there are actually people out there whose name is SCHITT. Shit. No, I'm not sure why Bill was doing his little shaking thing, but, I mean, the fact that he was like, we have Nasir and Nasir 2. It's like, oh, you kept running out of the name. And, of course, Maya and Fred always work well together. Definitely love that one. So, is it juvenile? Yes. Is it funny? Hell yes.
Yeah, and actually Bill's shoulder shaking thing reminded me of when I went to see Melissa Villaseñor do her stand-up live in Denver, and she had a bit which I don't know if you can find video of anywhere because music rights, but she talked about how like NSYNC's dance moves from the early 2000s when Bye 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 came out, they're all just these violent, herky-jerky shoulder movements, which, wouldn't look good on a date from, Justin Timberlake handing you flowers while doing that. But she demonstrated how you could use those moves to get out of a bar fight, and that was her closer. Moving on to the next quick bits, Bill and Fred on Weekend Update as the gay couple from Connecticut discussing same-sex marriage now being allowed in their state, which I wasn't too crazy about because it's basically the same shtick as the gay couple from New Jersey, except they moved him to Connecticut, so they changed him from like Tony Soprano type mobbed up thugs to these rich, stuffy Thurston Howell type WASP preppies, like Family Guy caricatures of WASP preppies that made them less appealing. But I mean, Hader's still a better actor than Armisen when it comes to selling these, and I got a little kick out of their lines about intentionally crashing their $40 million yachts into each other.
How did you two meet?
Seth, ours was a classic all-American love story. I was sipping a martini and admiring a handful of diamonds on my 200-foot yacht when I noticed this Yankee Doodle sailing his 200-foot yacht. So we did what anyone would do. We intentionally crashed our $40 million yachts into each other.
It's called flirting.
Ever since then, it's been smooth sailing.
Well, I think more highly of this. I know there's lots of people that bash on this whole series of the Connecticut and Maine, the Jersey guys. I still love them. Just the chemistry just makes them so believable as a gay couple. And Bill was just having a great time with Thurston Howell thing, which he did very well in a sketch the previous season with Tom Hanks.
Seven-armed Toby Slavin, I thought you retired.
Retired? Hardly. I was lured away by a very lucrative offer from Alaskan fishing cannery, who believed, and rightly so, that I could do the job of 3.5 men. 10 years later, I'm back in.
Bill is making a meal out of this. sinister shades of this Keith Morrison impression. This time, it kind of struck me as a mix of the Cowardly Lion and his John Boner impression. But just the way they look at each other, and of course, Bill's handsome as ever. I mean, I'm sorry, I just love the sketch. I love all the gay couple iterations, and each time the chemistry just grows and grows. I can't wait till eventually we get to the one for the guys in Maine, which is like, for me, the ultimate favorite. So
Yeah, and when I mentioned Family Guy characters, I was less thinking of Lois's dad and more the guys that work at the New Yorker, where they don't have toilets because no one at the New Yorker has an anus, and the kids in Chris's prep school, specifically like, was it John Henry Longtooth or Bottom Tooth, with a really long jaw and could only speak and just mumbles like. So I was thinking more of that. The last Bill moment in this episode is an intimate moment between Jessica Simpson and John Mayer, where, of course, Bill plays John Mayer and Kristen Wiig plays Jessica Simpson, who just struggle to make small talk for a minute before deciding to have sex, which makes me think, geez, was Tina Fey a guest writer this week? But, I do admire this era, this season specifically, giving us the occasional blackout sketch near the end of the show. And while this one wasn't my all-time favorite or anything, I don't know if I would have picked Wig to play Jessica Simpson, but she did fine. I saw what she was going for. She's well done enough for what it was, and I was okay with it. I like just brief bursts of absurd, disconnected one-liners. Like, I love the blues, and she's like, my highlights are too shiny. And I liked him imitating John Mayer's intense guitar mugging. And yeah, and the more I think about the sketch, the more I suspect that all of John Mayer's relationships with famous women were actually like this to some degree.
back in May of 2019, Bill Hader did a presentation at the 92Y in New York City with John Mulaney, and he was asked by an audience member, were there any impressions that got you into trouble or people didn't like? And he had this story to tell.
John Mayer got mad at me.
He did?
We did a thing about John Mayer and Jessica Simpson, and they were like, when they were dating, it was before you were probably born. and it was about how they had nothing to talk about, and then he approached me and said, hey man, me and Jessica, we actually watched that and we got really bummed out. And I was like, well, now you guys have something to talk about.
Okay, so now let's get into the non-Bill moments of this episode, and we'll start at the beginning. Oh boy, this is going to be an awkward cold open to talk about now, because it involves the Reverend Jesse Jackson, played by Daryl Hammond, and the Reverend Al Sharpton, played by Kenan Thompson, who are now reveling in their renewed cultural relevance in the face of the Don Imus scandal, and they're taking this opportunity to announce the opening of their new Wings of Hope Racist Rehab Center, where those who have publicly made racist remarks will be educated on the literary works of Ralph Ellison and Maya Angelou, as well as all the film side projects of Oprah Winfrey. Then they'll be made to atone for their misdeeds by parking cars at Jay-Z's party during NBA All-Star Weekend, and they'll go on Jackson and Sharpton's apology tour, which is known as Apolopalooza. So this kind of establishes a running theme for the night as far as topicality here in Non-Weekend Update, where one of the few segments throughout the night that comment directly former radio host Don Imus's scandal, stemming from referring to the Rutgers women's basketball team as, quote, nappy-headed hoes and hardcore hoes, which led to him apologizing to the Rutgers women's basketball team, and then he was fired from his radio shows, which, well, at least this feels different enough from the typical cold opens this era to be interesting in a semi-good way. Daryl as Jesse Jackson, a white man in even a light amount of blackface, even just playing a black man in a sketch satirizing a real life white man for real life racist comments he made that demeaned a specific group of black women. Not the best look for the show in 2025, but since this was 2007, they didn't think of it that way. So, well, Daryl wasn't bad enough to detract from this. He didn't add to it, but Keenan kept this afloat. This might have been the best use of his Al Sharpton impression. He had the better lines such as, you lost your damn job, and saying they'll force Don Imus to apologize to the Harlem Globetrotters and Both Cool and the gang. And I think that them photoshopping Don Imus through racist rehab could have been cut. Just looked awkward and visually off. And then at one point, Keenan, as Al Sharpton said,
We have discovered that Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton are still relevant.
Woo! You hear that, Barack? How you like us now?
Actual reference to something the real Obama said about the real Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton that week.
There was a TV funhouse in the Ellen Page Wilco episode, March 1st, 2008, called The Obama Files. Barack Obama sends Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton on wild goose hunts to non-existent countries to keep them from helping him. This is one that ended up showing to Hillary Clinton that night, as was revealed in the Live from New York book. And they forgot that, we're so short to the Hillary Clinton. Oh, wait, we forgot there's a Bill Clinton part in here, too. Yeah, I know at the time you thought, okay, this is okay if we made him to look like Jesse Jackson, but it still bothered me even back then, personally.
Yeah.
There's occasional Keaton funny lines. It's topical rather than really political, so it's nice changes. Of course, back then they weren't really so heavy on the political cold opens.
Yeah, and this did made me think of something that I remember coming way after this, was when everyone made fun of it. The real Jesse Jackson was caught on a hot mic after an interview on cable news in the summer of 08, and he actually said to someone, see, Obama's talking down to black people. I want to cut his nuts off. Which was a real thing that Jesse Jackson said. Let's move on to the monologue, where our first appearance of 20-year-old Shia LaBeouf, fresh off his success from Disturbia and preparing for Indiana Jones 4, is just walking around, and he's disappointed to learn that none of the cast, like Sudeikis, Hammond, or Thompson, or crew members like cue card guy Wally Ferriston, lighting guy Phil Himes, and costume guy Tom Broker, none of these people share in his sheer youthful excitement in doing the show. So Amy sets him straight.
This ain't no Disney shiz. Lose the perky Mickey Mouse attitude and focus up.
Okay.
Or instead of doing Indiana Jones 4, you're going to be working at Indiana Jake's Bratwurst factory on Interstate 4.
But then he runs into Kristen Wiig, who gives him a pep talk as Glinda the Good Witch to not let it get to him. But then Lauren comes in, forgets her name, so she has to remind him, and then tells her that the Wizard of Oz sketch was cut. So she's like, okay, son of a bitch. It was an okay monologue. Didn't seem to be much concept-wise to grab onto. But it was fun to be had. I like Jason's blasé reaction to Shia and the old guys, Daryl and Phil Himes, drinking, tumblers of Gas X, fast-acting liquid, and Metamucil with some scotch. And I like Keenan's sudden appearance, trying to hide the fact that he was smoking a blunt when Shia came up to him and said, see, Disney, Nickelodeon, we do make it. So that was...
It was a serviceable monologue. Anytime Lauren's in something, I always get a kick out of it. Constant forgetting of the names, as was done later on. Tina Fey hosted an episode. Is it new cast member or Arcade Fire? And where they bring in Lauren in as a lifeline, says, oh, so the black one? It's like, I've been here for 22 years or whatever. Not one of the best monologues ever, But I did like the one line from Sudeikis.
You know, I think it's going to be like one of the best shows of the season. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to say in the top 40%. I mean, you know, it'll air.
And why was he wearing that cape? Was he in like another Dracula or Phantom of the Opera sketch that got cut?
A random costume just for the sake of the bit.
Then we get what may be the last print show done while Fred Armisen and Maya Rudolph were cast members, but, you know, not the last time either of them would do these impressions on the show separately. It had kind of a played out feel to it to me in that by that point, I think the audience might have forgotten why the show thought it made this much sense to pair Prince and Beyonce together as co-hosts of a talk show. I think they did the first ones, they performed together at the Grammys or something, but that would have been like 3 years before this, and the real Prince was in the building, and they did one because the real Beyonce was in the building, and they didn't get the reaction that they hoped. The other impressions of the sketch were not great. Shia LaBeouf plays Tobey Maguire, who in real life, Tobey Maguire gets criticism for not being the most electrifying choice to helm a big summer popcorn comic book superhero franchise, but not that he didn't look or sound like him. He didn't need to play him as this big of like a real life Millhouse allergy obsessed dweeb. You know, Seth Meyers did a decent Tobey Maguire on Weekend Update that worked better for this when the first Spider-Man did come out and worked better for what they were going for. I did like seeing how his hands swelled up from sitting on a cupcake. Nice rush job on that. And normally I'm kind of hot and cold on Amy's Nancy Grace impression, and it didn't make a ton of sense here either, but I got a kick out of her dancing and mangling the words to Sheena Easton's You've Got the Look.
There's moments within the Prince show sketches that I like. The when he did the Spider-Man, when he shows the web shooting thing, and Princess decided to hide. Or having him like sit on the cupcake, and like we mentioned, because it was a Prince show in the Steve Martin episode that we covered, where they had him sitting on something weird. So it's built on moments.
Speaking of recurring sketches based on random celebrities hosting talk shows, it's the second of 3 Dakota Fanning shows, played by Amy Poehler. Continues to insult her band leader, Reggie Hudson, played by Thompson, as she alienates Dylan and Cole Sprouse, played by Shy and Andy, who were the stars of Disney's Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. And I think that was kind of an inside joke casting. Shy got his start on a Disney show too, and now he's playing someone who's currently on a Disney show. And she brings out her own little sister, Elle Fanning, who she belittles a career of until their mom / PA, Catherine, played by Kristen Wiig, steps in. And honestly, the first one of these was the only one that worked and hit all the right beats for me. Bill did a good Daniel Radcliffe in this one. I'm not even sure where this slightly off-putting portrayal of Dakota Fanning is like this impossibly cultured and well-read child actress came from. So she basically plays Dakota Fanning as like the real-life Lisa Simpson, but with a very low Sheldon Cooper level of self-awareness. That last part really makes it something you can only take so much of. So it's really amazing that he did 3 of these. And I don't remember where that would have came from. I do remember reading that, I think on Stooge's blog, Amy Poehler agreed to stop doing this after she'd heard from the real Dakota Fanning and her family that they were apparently deeply offended by a reference to one of her real-life movies. In the third one, you know, Keenan's good-natured reactions to Amy insulting him, you know, they're funny enough to balance this out. At the end, she tells him to put on his thinking cap, and he's like, I'll put a cap somewhere, all right, which, well, threatening a child, but only Keenan can put that over without making you think there might be darker implications there. Andy and Shy tried their damnedest to put this over with their energy, but what worked better for me was not them acting like kids, but when Amy just led them into an existential crisis, asking them why they were just playing, and then asking them a question that made Andy just mutter quietly, "You're scaring us," and then Avril's appearance was fun. I don't know if we needed two of the exact same characters here, but her performance worked, and so did Wiggs. So
it's a good use of Avril Lavigne. So I know this pseudo intellectual. All I could think of with this whole Dakota Fanning thing, what a pretentious little bitch. I wouldn't call Reggie's responses good natured, because I'm trying to think is like, I really hope she pays him well, because why does he stay and continue to take these insults at his intelligence? They should not have recorded this sketch. The first one did everything it needed to do. Maybe they just want to take maybe make use of Shia to play a Disney character, or may have a sketch of Avril Lavigne, but I just do not watch these if I don't have to.
Let's talk about a bit of Weekend Update and then gloss over a few things quickly. So this is still Seth and Amy's era update, which joke-wise, not a lot stood out to me. I got a kick out of, there was a real-life alcoholic drink that was being criticized as looking like it was marketed to kids, but no one says anything about SpongeBob Square Beer. There's a joke from Amy about how Lindsay Lohan said she wanted to play Princess Diana in a movie.
Unfortunately, the film is Herbie Goes to Paris.
It gets a bit worse. Well, Seth has a couple of jokes. There's a place in China where the women rule and unruly men are punished or shunned. And according to Seth, this is called the house I grew up in. But then he tells a joke, well, it's official. A prosecuting attorney just raped 3 Duke lacrosse players, which, what? I mean, that cannot be removed from the time fog. That only would have had to work in the time it was in, which, given the subject matter, I didn't really do a deep dive into there. We get Maya Rudolph as herself interviewing Andy Samberg as the late Anna Nicole Smith's personal attorney, Howard K. Stern, on his second place finish in the Anna Nicole Smith paternity case, finishing just behind a photographer named Larry Burkhead. And it's treated like, I want to say, a PGA golf interview, because it's very whisper quiet, like, wow, a tough break, but he just wanted more. You got to give it to him. Better luck next time.
Well, I think they're going for a people's court kind of vibe.
Yeah, but they treat it like it was some race, because first place, second place. But what? I mean, it's a surprisingly pleasant, decent format break from Update. But besides that, what is this? I mean, what the fuck? It's a joke about a dead celebrity's paternity trial being treated like not so much the People's Court, but a golf tournament. It's like, it's a grim commentary on the state of America's 24-hour news cycle and celebrity obsession. But again, doesn't work when you remove it from the time fog. It makes no sense. It just feels pretty off. Ironically, one thing that did save this update was Daryl Hammond as Don Imus himself, who fans call the I-Man, who's here to genuinely apologize for his nappy-headed host scandals. But this builds up into him brutally insulting and putting down any guests on his show recently who did not rush to his defense, who he calls pussies and bastards, and says they can kiss his big pink Don Imus, everyone, and Seth cuts him off. And I like the slow, sincere sounding, slow burn build up, and Daryl's delivery put it over. Just, he can make blunt insults work well. See, somehow this was funny enough that you didn't even have to know or remember who Don Imus was to at least get a chuckle out of it.
The one line I did like from Update was Hooters opening up in Israel.
It was announced that Hooters will open one of its restaurants in Israel this summer. So much for keeping the meat separate from the dairy.
And as someone who is Jewish, from my paternal background, I find it hilarious because it's a nice little play on the kosher rules. If you're kosher, you cannot have a cheeseburger because you cannot mix dairy and meat.
Okay, and we'll just gloss through a couple of these pretty quickly. There was the door-to-door knife salesman, where Will Forte is Blade P. Cutsworth, and his protege Shia LaBeouf is Bernard Throttle Hunt. They come very close to selling a knife to Melanie Ginsu, the heiress to the Ginsu knife fortune. Has every knife ever made, knives that cut through frozen carrots, reams of paper, but not a knife that can cut through a thumb, which she says, well, that'd be more impressive than a pinky because the thumb's a thicker bone to cut through. So Forte cuts off his own thumb, which leads into the most low-key played blood-spurting sketch ever employed in SNL history. So I like how this was played a bit subtly. I got a kick out of Wig's specification that, okay, she wants to see him cut off his thumb, but $13 for two knives was too expensive. And I also like how it ended with Forte says, I know this can't get any worse. It ends with just a sudden cutaway to a dog attacking the most obvious mannequin head dummy body you've ever seen. So just a brief burst of just violent absurdity. Deej, what did you think?
Definitely very Forte. You can definitely tell he had his weird hand behind it, which I'm surprised it wasn't like hello. Sorry, we have a bit of feline interrupt this at the Deej desk. Yes, I will give you your squeezy meat. After I'm done, which is almost soon. So, yes, I know, I'll put you down. There you go. He does not like to be held. Okay, yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell Forte's fingerprints are all over this. The Ginsu switch was kind of nice. Of course, I thought the knife company is probably a play on Cutco knives, which actually are good knives. I have some. They've served me very well over the years. And the other ones were how specific the knives are, because there is no such thing as a frozen carrot cutting knife. And as someone who has worked in professional kitchens in the past, I know my knives. That's not a thing.
And the last sketch to talk about is worth talking about. It's Shia and Maya, where Maya Rudolph suddenly aggressively seduces Shia LaBeouf in her dressing room on the basis that their names rhyme. And Shia is somehow used to this sort of treatment from older women and welcomes her advances. Not too much to say, but Maya was great in it, and it seemed like a sketch solely written for one performer to get another performer to break, and Shia came close at one point, but she elevated it above that level. It was a fun little low-key absurd thing that didn't take itself too seriously. I mean, she was a little over the top, but in a fun, self-contained, self-aware sketch, and it was the one that really made the most at. It was one of the most we made an absolute meal out of a threadbare premise sketch that I've ever seen. So
yeah, well, at least he was 20 or 21 at the time when he did this episode. So at least we don't at least have a Lindsay Lohan Hogwarts sketch situation going on. The Shia Maya reminds me of the Oprah Uma bit that was done in when David Letterman hosted the Oscars in 1995. And as far as how Maya's performance, yes, Maya can do very quiet, but she can also do, especially when someone comes in to let her know she needs to get on stage or whatever, they go,
I make a meager 10 pesos a week catching Dorado while you sit around your fat ass all day eating cream cheese with a spoon.
Messiah, I don't understand.
Let me tell you something, woman.
Messiah, we need to...
I probably would have switched the knife sketch and that one around.
Okay, so overall thought, not as consistently solid of a season 32 episode as the last one we reviewed, since this one seems to have built its reputation on one or two singular sketches tops, but not a bad episode outside of the specific standout moments that I chose it for. Not everything this episode will totally stand up to scrutiny, but it's 2007. That just comes with the territory. I was just impressed by what held up that well from this time, but it was a fun episode. Dee, do you have any last thoughts here?
Well, it was a good night for Bill.
That it was.
No, it is definitely one of my favorite episodes.
Well, that's it for this episode of We Heart Hater. We hope you'll enjoy. We hope you'll join us next time. And as far as what's in store for the next episode, I will throw it over to Deej to fill us in on the topic that she picked.
Yes, we are going to do a sequel to our second episode. We will be presenting a sequel to our second episode, No Small Rules, with No Small Rules 2 Electric Boogaloo, the animation edition. So all the smaller roles that Bill had in various animated films, once again, here's where he is. Is this worth watching the whole thing just for Bill, or are the clips we're going to include enough? And this will be a kind of a trilogy, so eventually we will go to the smaller TV roles of Bill, which was inspired, of course, by the Cat in the Hat trailer coming out. And every time I see it come up on her feed, I watch it because it's just so much fun.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one to do, and I've already thought of a few things for Bill's small TV roles, so I can't wait to get to that. But I'm really looking forward to it.
I am Deej Barons, and will continue to be.
And I will still be Casey Killingsworth until I am informed otherwise. And Deej, what is it that we do?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, is We Heart Hater.
We Heart Hater. That's what we do.
We Heart Hater. Thank you for listening to We Heart Hater. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. We Heart Hater is a presentation of Wacky Notion Productions. Created by Deej Barons. Hosted by Deej Barons and Casey Killingsworth. Recording and editing by Deej Barons. Intro and outro music by Music Unlimited, used under Creative Commons license, courtesy of Pixabay.com.